Do you find yourself saying, I am forgetful, or I can't remember what I did yesterday, let alone last week, or I don't remember what I did today, let alone yesterday? Do you find yourself concerned that this may be more than just busyness, or maybe it's that there's something brewing? It could be nothing. But when we convince ourselves that, oh man, I'm forgetful, then we continue to manifest this forgetful behavior. But what if you could do something to help you kind of like say, you know what? I I'm going to release these neurological disorders and I am not going to even look that direction. However, neurological disorders like epilepsy, diabetes, learning disabilities, neuromuscular disorders, autism, ADD, brain tumors, and cerebral palsy, to just name a few, are in the rise. Why? Why are they on the rise? Well, we are very fortunate because we have Dr. John Silva. Remember, he came on last month? Well, he's back again because we're going to continue doing the series because I am going through neurofeedback, and every morning, well, many mornings as I can, I am doing this neurofeedback. We're going to learn a little bit more about that. But most importantly, we're going to learn from Dr. John Silva, who is just an amazing, he's a doctor of chiropractic. However, he's really gotten very involved in the brain and how the brain functions and how to reprogram the brain, reformat the brain. But you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to him. And so today we're going to be learning about neurofeedback and dipping our toe, diving deeper into the solution to all this cognitive decline.
And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here waiting for you.
Hi, my name is Lillian McDermott, and I am a certified life coach and the host of the Lillian McDermott radio show Classroom. If this is your first time tuning in, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Well, as I mentioned to you before, the last class that we did, we were talking about understanding cognitive disorders, cognitive decline, neurological disorders. And so in comes this solution. And as the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to do it myself. So I drove over to see Dr. John, and he fit me, and the solution, the results of that we recorded. We're going to air this at another time, and we're going to learn how it affects me, and I'm going to be like your little guinea pig. But I'm more than just a guinea pig, because there's more than me that have done this. So I'm really excited that I am experiencing it, so I can share with you firsthand my experience with Dr. John Silva, who could do this from anywhere around the world, and he could do it with you too. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Dr. John Silva is back to do just that. Welcome so much. I'm so grateful that we can not only have a conversation on the air, but I really have enjoyed learning from you off the air as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me back in the classroom. I'm looking forward to today's class and diving deeper, as you mentioned, into what neurofeedback is and how we do this and how it can be done from the comfort of your home these days. So, and it's been a pleasure working with you. And by the way, as I mentioned before we even got on this podcast today, great job for staying consistent with your training sessions. I'm going to give you a little bit more insight now that you've been underway for the last several weeks, and just give you a little more insight as to how your brain's responding. And we'll continue to monitor your progress. And I'm happy for you. It's always an exciting journey when you get started on this kind of stuff.
Thank you. And I have some questions for you, because I'm a little concerned about the shows I've been watching. Maybe I should watch something a little bit more intellectual, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
So let's talk about what, Dr. John, what's going on with all this cognitive decline. I just interviewed a young man who is autistic. He was Asperger when he was diagnosed at the age of 6, and now he is considered autism spectrum because Asperger went into the autism spectrum.
Mhm.
But I remember the first time I started dipping my toe into learning about autism and these kind of issues, it was 1 in 10,000. This was in 2012. Now we're finding autism and the spectrum of ADD, all this stuff that's happening right now with the mind, it's 1 in 36. What is going on?
Yeah, and I think it's predicted by 2050, if I stand corrected, 1 in 4. I
Ah,
mean, think about it. We're only 25 away, roughly 25 years away from that. Yeah, and it, it is sad. It's a sad state of affairs. And being in clinical practice now for 20 plus years, about 5 years into it, started to really pay attention to the fact that there was a lot of publications, going to postgraduate courses and going to seminars, and the talk was of this emerging neurological epidemic, and we are in the midst of it, unfortunately. In fact, I am part of a group of practitioners, from neuropsychologists to traditional therapists, psychologists, physicians of all sorts, like myself, chiropractic physicians, DOs, MDs, who are delving into the solutions for these kinds of problems, and preferably in a natural, holistic way. Because as we've seen, unfortunately, a lot of the medicines don't serve us well, especially when it comes to neurological conditions. So we have a forum and we communicate virtually on a daily basis. We exchange best practices, we exchange the latest research. In fact, I'm sometimes inundated with the amount of research articles that come into my inbox, but it's wonderful. And I save a lot of the stuff, I kind of categorize it. And one that came up about 3 weeks ago was just what I've been noticing, and again, what I was privy to about 15 years ago, that we were in the midst of this emerging epidemic, and here we are sitting smack dab in it. But here's the title. This is from, let's see, MedPage Today: Neurological Conditions Now Leading Cause of Disability Worldwide. Nervous system disorders are affecting 43% of the global population. And
wow.
this is even prior to, which I won't get into that today. Maybe this
Wow.
could be a topic for another discussion, but this is even prior to COVID and everything that's come since COVID in 2020. We already knew we were heading this direction. And you mentioned a perfect example is with neurodevelopmental problems and delays with children. And of course, there's a number of medical diagnoses like autism, and there's varying degrees on that spectrum. And yeah, we've been seeing that number grow. And of course, in my clinical practice, I'm seeing more and more kids coming in with more and more neurological challenges that were never there. I mean, when I first started practice, well, they were there, but not like I'm seeing them now.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate. It is, again, there's a multitude of reasons why, but this is the reality. However, I always like to look at solutions.
Yep.
Okay, what exists, what has existed, what can we do to be able to not be a statistic, part of that 43%, or perhaps maybe we are part of that 43%. What can we do to bring ourselves out of that statistic
Yeah.
and feel better and not go down that slippery slope of dementia, okay, as I call it. And unfortunately, I've worked with several individuals in their later years that were just, unfortunately, their cognitive decline was too significant. Even the best of what I had to offer, which is quite a bit, wasn't able enough to return their cognitive health to where it was pre dementia status. But yeah, just, and I just wanted to share with you. This is there was a number of things that they listed, and you mentioned some of them. What was interesting to me was the number one condition, which was surprising to me, but then again, not so surprising, was diabetic neuropathy. So I am very familiar with that. In fact, before I really got into more of a brain-based practice, if you want to call it, and that's pretty much where I've been at for the last 10 years. But prior to that, a lot of my practice, my clinical practice, was set up in helping people with peripheral neuropathies, or neuropathies for short. And they're commonly coined as diabetic neuropathy because they're most associated with the condition of diabetes type 2. However, what I've learned in my practice is it's not always diabetics that have neuropathy. It can come from nerve irritation, nerve impingements coming from the spine. It can come from chemical toxicity. It can come from previous traumas, car accidents. In fact, the majority of the people that I saw didn't necessarily have diabetes, or if they did, it was very, very much in its infancy or pre-diabetes, and they were still suffering with these significant neurological conditions of the extremities, most notably their feet and their legs. But I found that was an interesting statistic, and again, something I've come to realize for the last 15 years, and I still continue to help people with peripheral neuropathies in addition to helping people with their brain-based disorders. And I sometimes will joke with people, I went from a practice mostly involved in working from the feet with the feet, now up the other end of the body to the brain. But again, the nervous system is everything in between those 2 points, and
Mm.
you have to look at it as a whole.
So would problems with the feet, by fixing the brain, could that solve the problem with the feet or no?
Yeah, and
Is that
what's
what you're saying?
interesting, yeah, so twofold to that. Back at that time when I was, again, my practice was mostly involved in helping people. I was just starting to emerge into this brain-based practice. It really intrigued me. And neurons or nerve cells, we call them neurons in the brain, but nerve cells are nerve cells. Yes, there's
Hmm.
some differentiation between what's in your brain and compared to your extremities or your feet or your toes. But nonetheless, they're nerve cells.
Hmm.
And they're going to be subject to the same type of damage no matter what end of the nervous system. So one of the messages I would really try to convey, and of course, when you're dealing with peripheral neuropathies, it's typically a disease process of the older generation. However, I was starting to see more people now in their 30s and 40s developing these symptoms, and sometimes really, really severe, which was shocking to me. But I was trying to relate to them that, a lot of this is because of lifestyle, and realize if you're getting damage to your nerves in your lower extremities, say your feet and your legs, for instance, you have to realize that same inflammatory process, that same toxicity isn't just targeting the nerve cells there, it's also targeting your brain.
Hmm.
And if you were to sit down and have a conversation with them or give them an assessment or a questionnaire, you could uncover that they probably had emotional disorders, maybe dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety, sleeplessness or sleep issues. A lot of these folks were starting to develop forgetfulness and memory issues. So these neurological disorders aren't just confined to one part of our nervous system, it's the entire body as whole. So to further expand on your question, can the brain, by getting the brain better, I think that was your question, can that help with peripheral neuropathies? And absolutely yes. It may not be
Interesting.
the complete solution, but how I know that is as, again, I've taken my practice into more brain-based focus, which makes sense because that is central command of the entire nervous system throughout our body. Start getting this better regulated. I have actually had individuals where we never set them up on any type of specific peripheral neuropathy treatments, just worked on their brain, and
Hmm.
lo and behold, their feet, their legs, the numbness, the tingling, the burning, the
Wow.
pain that they describe diminishes. And I've even had a couple of situations, especially with the older, I should say the younger patients, where it's completely eliminated, yet we never touched their feet.
Wow.
And there's a reason for that from a neurological perspective. So it's really, really encouraging. And we can take this into general pain-based conditions too. I've worked with several individuals over the years who suffer with chronic pain in sometimes more than one part or region of their body. And as you get their brain in a better regulated state, they start to notice a lessening of their pain, an increase of their daily energy, because pain saps your energy. I mean, that's just a given, and it's just quite interesting. And so that's why so much of my practice is this first. And of course, as we're going through this process, if I feel they need specific therapies for another part of their body or to address a specific causative factors, then we're going to open up that conversation and
Hmm.
tackle that or deal with that.
Yeah, and when I first met you, one of the things that we had in common back then was Avazzia.
Yes.
And so that was another way that you could help with this neuropathy. And that's what I thought, okay. But then the more I've gotten to know you, the more I realize, well, yeah, the brain does make a difference. It can change the expression of your gene, the way you feel about things and the way we think about things. So I can see how that could be. I could see how that could be because what we focus on is what manifests. So if we're focusing on the pain, then of course the body's going to create more pain because it's trying to please us, right? So if we're focusing on the solution, which is to be pain-free or to resolve an issue, then if we're focusing on that, that will happen too. So it's
Yeah.
interesting that the number one. So are there others? Are there others? How many were on the list of this that is on the rise?
Oh, I mean, it went on to name, of course, Alzheimer's, the various types of dementias, neuropathy, of course, your neurodevelopmental problems in children and teens, such as autism, ADD, ADHD, which is affecting, of course, adults as well. Kids
Mhm.
aren't isolated in having ADD. In fact, I probably work with more adults with attention deficit, either had been missed while they're younger and they just struggled through their whole life, and now finally realizing that I'm worse than my children. I
Yeah.
need to address this. So yeah, those were just some of them, and of course you have your seizure disorders such as epilepsy, which by the way responds very very well to neurofeedback
Really?
because the way I like to try to make things in simplistic terms. Yes,
Okay.
these conditions are very complex in a sense, but I like to try to look at things as simplistic as we can. The way I understand seizures and seizure activity in the brain is basically it's the brain trying to reset itself because it's become so how should I say, there's so many short circuits that the brain is trying to do a reset, and unfortunately, that reset manifests in seizure activity. And of course, if you know anyone that's ever had epilepsy or any type of seizure activity, there's varying degrees of this. I mean, people can go into full-blown convulsions. It can be life-threatening to more of just neurological tics, or they have issues throughout the day. But it's the brain trying to reset these faulty neurological patterns that are just misfiring. And when we can identify that and then start to use things like neurofeedback, we can actually start to reset that brain faulty wiring, if you want to put it that way. And I've worked with plenty of individuals where we've been able to significantly reduce the seizure activity, in a lot of cases even resolve it,
Mm,
which I mean sounds unreal, but I've been there and helped people to do that. And it's not me, again, as I may have mentioned in our previous class, and as I talk to people on a day-to-day basis, I don't have any special powers or abilities in my hands or through therapies or tools. It's just bringing the resources together, the knowledge, applying that. Yes,
mm,
there is an art and kind of a craft to this,
yeah.
and then encouraging people to follow through on their therapies because this is not a one and done. This is not like taking a pill and everything kind of goes away or subsides until your next dose. This takes some work, takes some action on a person's part, but it is amazing what the nervous system, particularly through the brain, has the ability to do in terms of healing and resetting itself.
And, but interestingly enough, um, when people take that pill, in many cases, they're conditioned to believe they need to take that pill for the rest of their life. So the mindset for natural health, doing something that's different, it's like, oh, I do it once and I'm done, right? But no,
Mhm.
it's not like that. Sometimes it's a buildup. Like I've been doing this now for 2 weeks now, or maybe even
Two
more.
to 3 weeks, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I took a little break when we did the event, the I Am the Solution
Mhm.
Natural Health Summit, but then as soon as I could, I returned to it. And so I'm you said that all I needed to do for 4 days, and I think I'm like surpassing 4 days. So I want to get this done as fast as I possibly
Mhm.
can. But here was my limiting belief, and maybe you can correct this. And for all of us, is when I was a young mom, I was told that, and I learned that the first 7 years of a child's life is when the neurons are connecting. Once that happens, those neurons don't connect anymore, that you're done. But with the work of Joe Dispenza and the work of others that are out there, we've learned that this is not true, that we can continue to build that neuroplasticity, that those cells to connect with the brain, that it's not that stern, that it does have some flexibility. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, you're right in saying that. I mean, healthcare, healthcare sciences, neurological sciences, neuroscientific research up until probably 25 years ago.
Yeah.
We thought that our brains were hardwired about that age. And then if we were subject to any type of head trauma and resulting injury to our brain function or a stroke or toxicity, I mean, there's a plethora of things that can affect our brain function, that was it. That was our lot in life. That's how, that was a new wired pattern, and we had to just deal with it. But we know better now, and there's plenty of science to support this. This is not like, we think it is. We know for certain now that our brains have the ability to create new neural synapses. So synapses are basically, think of them as wires, the two neurons that come together and they make electrochemical connection. Okay. Um, and these are called synapses. And what happens, to give you a perfect example, you learn how to ride a bike. Okay. At some point in your life, when you were a child, either your parents or someone taught you how to get on the bike, start balancing, start pedaling. What you were doing physically through your body, actively going through those motions. And of course, part of this is just the mindset that, hey, everyone else in my neighborhood is riding my bike. I want to be able to ride my bike. So there goes the fear for most kids anyway. So you go through that, and that belief is first and foremost. So I'm glad you touched on that. We'll probably come back to that. But then as you start to go through those motions and you start getting the coordination and balancing, you are creating new neural connections in your brain that will stay with you for a lifetime on how to ride a bike. And again, this can apply to anything, including just our emotions and our thought patterns, our behaviors. These are all hardwired neurological patterns that can be changed for the better. So to come back to that bicycle, I've met so many people over the years that for whatever reason, they stopped riding a bike since they were a child. And then here they are later in life, they want to maybe just get on a bike because they're on vacation or they want to exercise again. It's really not one of the things that you just lose for the most part. Yeah, you might feel a little unsteady, but you get back on that bike because those patterns were wired and they stayed there throughout your lifetime. So the point being is, if we have these patterns that have become damaged, causing us to lose cognitive abilities or diminishment in cognitive abilities like forgetfulness or memory issues, or it's disrupting our emotional well-being. Maybe we're anxious and stressed all the time, we're feeling depressed. Those neurological patterns have become hardwired and ingrained to us. And the more you continue to live that way, the more ingrained they become. And that now becomes your demeanor. And unfortunately, when you're in that state, it's hard to relate to other people. It's hard to seek help. But what we know now is we can unwire these neurological patterns and create these new neurological connections and keep reinforcing that. That's what neurofeedback is all about. And we can actually reset our brain and overcome the cognitive, emotional, behavioral challenges and also physical manifestations of these problems in the brain.
I keep waiting for that moment where I go, whoa, I'm done. I'm waiting for that moment. Will that moment ever happen? That's what I want to
in,
know.
in time. So let's talk about that. So
Yeah, let's talk about the
neurofeedback,
process.
as I tell people, it's a process. So be patient with the process. As you can see, it's easy. You're getting to watch movies or television shows. Some cases, I have people listening to their favorite relaxing music. So it's not like it's anything hard to do. You're taking a half hour of your day to take some time for yourself to do the sessions. Each time you're doing the sessions, your brain is creating these new neural synapses. And with repetition, that's why it's important to stay consistent on a weekly basis, just like working out at the gym. You're getting your brain to reinforce those new neural connections to a point where eventually you will feel the effect of these new neurological connections that have bypassed the old ones that have been plaguing you for your sleep issues or whatever else that it was that we discussed that you were embarking to do this on. And again, it varies from one person to the next, but that comes in time. And the beauty about this is once we've done enough of those sessions and we've created these new neurological patterns and we've done perhaps a few more weeks just to reinforce that, consolidate that. In fact, we call that the consolidation phase of neuroplasticity or neurofeedback. This is a long-lasting change. And how I know that is I've worked with plenty of individuals over the years where I may run into them in public, or they'll just call to refer somebody and we'll check in to see how they're doing. And they're still doing wonderfully even after years. So they're not dependent on having to continue doing this because they've taken the time initially to create these new neural connections to, again, bypass those faulty ones that were responsible for whatever brought them into my practice. And that's a lifelong change. Now, there is another application of using neurofeedback for general wellness purposes. So to continue to optimize your brain function well beyond your challenges that you may set out to do this for. And that's where this field and this realm of neurofeedback and other neuro-based therapies becomes really exciting. Not that it's not exciting to help people out of their depression and anxiety and improve their sleep, but where it gets really exciting is where you can start to now tap into that inner potential that we all have. But when we're bogged down with anxiety and stress and sleep issues, it's hard to ever realize that potential. Never mind, some people I can't even think about that. They just see a dismal future every day they get up. How am I going to see myself out of this? So when you get through that and you're feeling better and you're thinking better and you're thinking clearly, I've had so many people that once they get through that and they experience what neurofeedback has to offer, they're like, I don't want to give this up. This process that I've become accustomed to is like working out. It's like you don't just stop working out for most people anyway,
Mhm.
because it helps you feel good. I mean, if you go and work out, especially if you're doing aerobic activity, you feel charged after you're done for the most
Mhm.
part. Yeah, you're
Mhm.
tired, but at the same time, you feel charged. You feel good about yourself.
Yes.
This becomes that type of a workout. And I can't tell you how many people, just last week, actually, I'm working with a young gal who's been suffering for quite some time with depression, completely has broken through that. Her anxiety is gone. And she's like, I don't want to give this up. We're well into the later parts of her therapy sessions. So now we're venturing into, and this is a subset of neurofeedback as a whole, what's called alpha theta training, or commonly referred to as neuromeditation. So
Mhm.
now we're using the technology to, because she's well beyond her anxiety and depression. Now we're going to use it to continue to optimize her brain to get her to that next level.
Nice.
And in my opinion, there's no ending level. I mean, you just continue to evolve as a human being, as a person. And what's really neat about this is doing this kind of work myself. In fact, when I started my own personal neurofeedback journey, it wasn't because I felt I had any issues. I did a brain map. I was not, well, I shouldn't say what, I was not surprised. I was quite surprised at how much dysregulation I did have, but yet it wasn't manifesting, at least that I could see. But I set out to do this from a wellness perspective. I wanted to just see what I could get out of this. And if I could see a difference, could I feel the difference? And I did this type of what's called alpha theta training or neuromeditation, and that journey was incredible. I mean, it almost gets to a point where the word I'm using it loosely, but addicting. It's like
Oh,
I couldn't wait till my next session,
yeah.
and I don't do it as frequently as I used to, but during that year or 2 years that I was doing it quite consistently and almost becoming addicted to it, that has now carried forward. So that was back around 2017, 2018. Here we are 7 years later, and I still have the effect of that and some of the things that's manifested in my life and changed in my life.
That's
Big part of
awesome.
it is just expanding our thinking to
Yeah.
that next level. That a lot of this is touched on by, you mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza. I love his work, and he's taken this to even a whole nother level in his trainings and his teachings, and of course his events, his live events. But it's all based on the brain and how our brains are wired.
Yeah, yeah, there's okay, so I'm just gonna share with you my fears. And and I don't dwell on fears, but I write them down so that I can ask you questions, and
Hmm.
and they have to do with my limiting beliefs. I In the last 4 years, I guess since 2020, 2020. I remember going into 2020 going, this is a year of vision, clear vision, 2020, right? And then all of a sudden, we were shut down and all these things
Hmm.
that happened during that time. And it was during that time that I started looking at what we see is not reality. What we're being told on television is not real. A lot of the things, and I woke up to that, right? And so there was a part of me, and maybe you can address this, that I felt I don't want something hijacking my brain. I want to be able to, and there was another product that I used to use called Brain Tap. And I used to do that. And then all of a sudden I met somebody that I questioned their integrity and I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do it. And so with that in mind, how is this different? How is neurofeedback different than brain tapping or I just don't want my brain to be hijacked.
Sure.
I
No,
want
that's
to
it.
continue with my growth, not being
Yes.
forced to it. Yeah.
It's a valid concern. It's a question I get sometimes, especially when parents bring their kids in. Like, are you going to hijack their brain? You're going to change their personality. This is not about changing your personality, who you have become throughout your life. It's just making a better version of you through upgrading. Let's use computer technology. We're going to take Lily Brain 2.0 to 2.5 and then 3, and we're going to keep doing these upgrades,
Yeah.
but without changing who you are, just bettering who you are. And again, this is the fascinating part of this field is, again, it's wonderful. And I every day I thank God that I've been blessed with this knowledge and I've sought this out along the way. And this is ultimately where I felt when I first started my career as a chiropractic physician. I mean, our whole career isn't just about back pain, neck pain, and the spine. It's
Hmm.
about improving neurological function through the spine, through spinal
Correct.
manipulations or
Correct.
adjustments. But I always wanted to learn more about the brain and how we could influence that. In fact, speaking of brain tap, that was one of the first technologies or therapies I brought into my practice to start helping people in that
Yeah.
process,
Yeah.
especially with that technology, because it really helps you with your mindset as you're using the light and sound stimulation. Um, and then I eventually evolved in, and I still use varying versions of that, but now
Hmm.
I've used neurofeedback as the primary source to tap into that inner potential because it is the most direct way that I know to influence in a natural, non-invasive, non-coercive way
Yes.
to get a better version of you and to overcome whatever challenges. And again, beyond that. And
Yeah.
that's been my personal journey is I had some things that I used to procrastinate on and would wait till the last minute, whether it was in my schooling or my career. And when I started doing this performance type of neurofeedback or neuromeditation feedback, it really got me well beyond that. Now I don't even think twice about doing things that I would otherwise just shrugged off or said, "Nah, that's not motivating to me." I just make sure I get it done, and also a lot more solutions oriented than I ever used to be in my whole lifetime. I mean, if there's a challenge, no matter how big or too small, first thing I'm asking, wherever else might be asking and being dragged down by it, what do we do here? What do we need to do right here in the now and
Yeah.
present and in the
Yeah.
future?
That's right.
There's a solution. This is just a challenge. We can overcome this. What's the solution?
Yeah.
And if that solution didn't work, what's the next one that we use? Or is it a combination of solutions? And I
Yeah.
apply that same thing in my clinical practice too, because yes, I speak of neurofeedback. We're talking about that today. It has become the core of any therapy I've ever offered, or I've personally done. But there are many other therapies that I offer to people that work synergistically with neurofeedback. But this so far has been the most profound. It really has. And this is where I discovered Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And if you ever followed his career, his life story and such, I mean, like myself, chiropractic physician, had a terrible injury, was able to think his way through his injury because that's all he had to work with
Hmm.
was his brain at that time because he was literally paralyzed.
Yeah.
And then he went on to change his chiropractic profession, much like I've done, to a whole level using it. If you look at what he does at live events, in the back of the room, they're doing QEEG brain maps on people. And they have in the audience, and of course through your home trainings that you can do with him, he's teaching people how to get into these deep states of meditation. And again, whether they're doing this on their own or they're using technologies like brain tap or neurofeedback to do that, um, that's where the magic of this healing really takes place. It's
Hmm.
really truly coming from here. And how we know this too is really exciting is he has been able to measure amplitude levels in the brain at moments when people are going through spontaneous healing at these events. or what he was probably doing back in when he was actively in clinical practice.
Yeah.
And what I mean by amplitude is when we have, like when you came into my practice and we put the cap on your head that had all these sensors, and just to reiterate what we may have discussed on our last podcast together, for those that are new, these sensors aren't emitting any electricity into the brain.
Mhm.
They're simply just sensors that are reading brainwave activity, and then I go ahead and record that brainwave activity to make sense of it and see where a person's brain is not functioning properly. So we call that amplitude. Basically, it's a measurement of the voltage output because our neurons are creating electricity. And how is electricity primarily measured? Is through voltage. It's a very small voltage called microvoltage, but that's what we're measuring with neurofeedback or QEEG or quantitative EEG.
Mhm.
So what Dr. Joe was able to measure are these levels of amplitude or microvoltage that have never been recorded on EEG before.
Wow.
At these moments when people were coming out of some of the most severe health challenges or crises in their life. And it wasn't just about that moment, it was again about his work or their guidance through his work on to get to that point.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you recall, I sent you an email a couple weeks ago about his new documentary that's about to be released, where he has teamed up with scientists, I'm not sure globally, but at least here in the States, where they are, of course, using QEEG, which he's always been using, but also have done genetic testing. They've been
Nice.
doing epigenetic testing, blood analysis, and now he's taking this to numerous researchers and other physicians to really prove this kind of work. And it's not just him, again, it's just how our
Yeah.
bodies are wired and how we heal. But it's fascinating stuff. I forget the name of the documentary, but I'm excited
Yeah.
to see it once it's released here soon.
Yeah,
So,
I remembered, I wrote it down that you had sent me some testing that I needed to do, but when in the process of doing the I Am the Solution Natural Health Summit, I put everything aside, and
mhm,
then so I just had like some time to kind of regain my office again because
sure, sure.
it's been all about that, and I just put a little note, you got to do the testing, and I'm glad you reminded me of the video. Now, is that something we can watch? Because I think I clicked on it and I wasn't able to watch it.
There is a trailer on YouTube.
That's
Just
what I
getting
did
you.
see that. I did
Yeah,
see the trailer. Yeah.
I'm on his email list, so as soon as it comes out, I'm going to be sure to go either to a theater or
Send it
pay
to me.
for investing in it. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
going to be probably a digital upload that you can invest in, but I can't wait because this is just again, I'm a big fan of his work, especially since we have similar career paths and
Yeah.
he's in this realm of brain-based stuff, but at a whole other level.
It is.
And I
It
know
is.
several people that have gone to his events, and they say it is quite an experience. What you witness there and what you encounter is quite amazing. So
It
I
is.
feel like I'm doing a small portion of that at a local level. But even beyond my local practice, I mean, as you are doing, you're doing your neurofeedback sessions from home, and you're a couple hours from me here in
Yes.
Port St. Lucie. So we have this ability through these emerging technologies and advancements in computer science and cloud-based technology to be able to do what you would have to normally do at a clinic or an event like Dr. Joe Dispenza's. We can do some portion of that for ourselves with some guidance, and that's the exciting part of this whole thing that really keeps me going on a personal level. Because again, I feel there's no end to what we can achieve and what we can do.
I really do. I mean, it's really exciting because I know I don't I'm still going through the motions. I had a pretty huge event that just happened. So my focus has been on that. So now that it's been time where I'm just sitting there and I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, I'm watching these shows. Should I be watching Joe Dispenza movie? And I tried to do a YouTube video on something that was, stimulating to my
Mhm.
intellect and stimulating to my career, because I loved learning about the mindset and all of that. But every 5 minutes or 3 minutes, there was a commercial. And I know that during this time, you want me to be calm and not do a lot of movement. And so I thought, yeah, I can't do this. And I refused to pay money to not be able to watch the video, be ad free. Because I know that even if I pay that, I'm still going to be getting some pop-ups or whatever. So
Yeah.
I have to figure out what my balance is. And then I go, Why am I watching this mindless show? I don't have time for this mindless show. I want to do something where I can do research and then watch it while I'm learning. And so what is your advice as opposed to pick a movie or pick something to watch that whether it makes you laugh and it's kind of mindless or it's helping you with your career,
Yeah. That's a
education?
great question. So yeah, first off, the outcome will be still the same because I've
Okay.
had people that have gone through this process. Take children, for instance. They're happy to just sit down and watch their mindless YouTube. And I call it mindless. We're not that generation. They get it. I don't get it, but they're watching these cartoons. They're watching what's the guy, the popular YouTuber, Mr. Beast,
Yeah.
and they're watching Disney movies. Yet they can have the same outcome as an adult who is entrenching themselves in Dr. Joe Dispenza's
Yeah.
videos or other things.
Yeah.
The outcome will still be the same. And for those again that may be tuning in for the first time, let's I guess back up just a moment and explain how neurofeedback
Yes.
works.
Let's do
Because we're
that.
talking about watching movies and my brain is getting better. Well, why can't I watch gobs of television every night and my brain isn't getting better? It's getting
Oh,
worse, especially if we're tuning into bad stuff. But how neurofeedback works is we're using QEEG technology. It's called quantitative EEG, which is EEG has been around for decades. It's a way of analyzing brainwave uh, information or brainwave function in our brain. Well, I should say how we measure our brain's function is through our brain's brain waves. Okay. And we've come to know these brain waves and we give them names such as delta brain waves, theta, alpha, and beta. There's also high beta and gamma. And what we do through neurofeedback is we have sensors on the scalp, um, and these sensors are attached to a little black box called an amplifier. And that amplifier is attached to a laptop computer, and the software controls and regulates the neurofeedback experience. So
okay,
as you've
right here.
mentioned, yeah, there it is. There's the amplifier, and there's the sensors. And again, just to reiterate, there's no electricity coming from those sensors
No,
zapping Lily's brain as we're doing this or her
no,
scalp.
no.
No, they're just reading information. And what she does is she chooses a video, either on Netflix or Amazon. I mean, the possibilities are limitless, and just something that's going to hold your attention so you can keep your eyes on the screen. What's happening is the software is regulating the brightness of the screen as you watch it. And as you described, the video kind of gets dark and then returns back to normal brightness. It will go dark, and it will do this intermittently throughout the session. What this is doing is providing feedback for your brain or anyone who's doing this as to its poorly regulated self that we measured when we did your QEEG brain map. So when we did your brain map, I put together a specific protocol that is getting your brain to first recognize these dysregulated brainwave patterns. And what do I mean by that? And I'm just giving an example. I don't remember your brain maps exactly, but let's just say you have too much beta brainwave activity when we measured it, and maybe too little alpha. So we're getting your brain to recognize that it's producing too much beta, too little alpha, and we want it to correct that. And the way it corrects itself is through what's called operant conditioning. It's a reward system. So when your brain figures it out, it gets a reward. So when it lowers its beta brainwave activity and brings up alpha, it gets a reward. And the reward for you or someone doing neurofeedback is that's when the screen goes bright. Okay, so at the moments that the screen is dim, that's your brain in its current dysregulated state and probably has been that way for quite some time. The brain, as it's doing neurofeedback and you're watching the video, doesn't like the fact that the video is dark. And it's going to figure out what it needs to do to get that screen to go bright. And the cool thing about this, and you can attest to this, Lily, you're not consciously thinking about this. In fact, I don't want people to think about the process. That's all you have to do is hold your attention on your movie or your television program. Your brain figures this out for you. But at the moment the brain figures out, hey, lower this elevated beta, bringing up this low alpha, at the moment it reaches a specific threshold, which I've programmed into your sessions, it gets a reward. And that's when the screen goes bright for you. Now,
Yeah.
your brain recognizes that as a reward and tries to hold on to that for as long as it can. So you may have noticed moments where it's just a few seconds and it goes dark,
Yeah.
or it could be up to a minute or a half a minute.
Yeah.
and then it goes dark again. So it's this kind of repetition of your brain seeking this reward, being rewarded for doing a good effort, and then it kind of falters back to its hardwired patterns.
Yeah.
But each and every time you go through these repetitions, and each and every time you sit down to do a session several times a week, we keep reinforcing these reward patterns. And
Hmm.
eventually you get to a point where now we, again, going back to our synapses, we've taken these synapses that perhaps for you are responsible for your sleep issues, and now we've taken this connection, we've made a new connection over here, bypassing this old one, and now you're sleeping better. And
Yeah.
this was all through this neurofeedback process.
Well,
So,
I'm still waiting for that, and I'm one of the things that I want everybody to know is that there will be a video of my consult after Dr. Dr. Silva, um, he read my report and everything, and this is just a brief overview of what we had. I could not believe how much red and yellow there was,
yeah.
and but we want it to be gray. So depending on where I'm at. And so we recorded that session. So we're going to be airing it at another time. I just haven't been able to get access to it because we recorded it on my phone and it went into my cloud, and I just haven't figured out how to access. So we need to reach out to Zoom to see how we can do that. But I'm very hopeful because I want to make sure that my brain and my mindset stays focused on what it wants, which is to be Lily 3.0 or Lily
Mhm.
4.0. Actually, right now I'm Lily 6.0 and might be 6.1 pretty soon. I'll be 6.1 pretty soon in May. And it's also the 14th anniversary of the classroom. So, I understand and believe in these things. I just want to make sure that I'm doing it I'm doing it with the right people or the right person that I trust. And that's so important. And that is so important that we understand what we're doing as opposed to, hey, do it. No, I don't want anybody to do that. But
Yeah.
anything else that you want to add about that?
No, that pretty much sums up the process. There is another way that I sometimes will do neurofeedback with individuals where they listen to music rather than watching videos. So in those cases, they have their eyes gently closed, they have headphones on, they choose relaxing music. Doesn't matter who the artist or genre, they just choose something they can relax to. And what happens in that case is the mechanism of feedback is the volume going up and down. And again, they're not concentrating on how to keep the volume at
Mhm.
its peak state. They're just kicking back and relaxing. In fact, a lot of the neuro meditation application of neurofeedback is done using music or specific frequency tones. So there's a variety of different feedback mechanisms, and it's easy to do. And to come back and ultimately, I know your question was, does it matter what I watch? It doesn't.
No.
However, you like myself, if I'm going to take the time to watch something on a television screen or a
Yeah.
laptop computer screen, I want to make it informative. So I typically will tune into Dr. Joe's videos
I
or the latest podcasts or videocasts, as whatever you want to call it,
I'll do
that
that.
is explaining more, particularly in the realm of healthcare and neurosciences. But you can
Yeah.
easily just lose yourself in a sitcom or the latest movie if you want.
Yeah. And that,
Yep.
and that's good. And I don't sit and watch things like that very often, but so it's nice that I can do that. But I really do want to take this time to kind of like learn and grow because it's a good quality 30 minutes that I am doing this. And so I do have some more questions about it. But before we continue that, I want to encourage everybody to go to whenyounneedafriend.com. This is where we take ownership for our life. This is where where we say, this is what I want for my life. And we focus on solutions, not the problem. And I'm really excited that Dr. John Silva and I have come together and create this course. Or it's not a course, it's just basically a class for me where you can see what's going to happen to me and through this process. So I'm really excited about that. So while you're at whenyounneedafriend.com, please subscribe and like and follow me on all social media. Share this video with your friends. Let people know that there is another solution than taking medications. Again, my registered service mark is you can take a pill, you can take responsibility, but I am not against the pill. I am for doing what you can to kind of live the life that you desire without having to be drugged all the time. So if this is something that you want to achieve too, then come in this journey with me. I'm really excited to do this with Dr. Silva. While you're there, please also check out my sponsors. Focus, support my sponsors the way that they're supporting the classroom. Check out my Shop Now bag. I think we're going to have like a little something for Dr. John if you click on it, so that it'll take you there as well, so that you can learn a little bit more about what it is that I am doing with my mind. And I know that everybody's watching because they want to do this too. What I like about it is it's tailored to me, as opposed to when I was listening to Brain Tap, everybody was listening to the same thing and everybody was becoming the same thing. I like this, that this is about my results as opposed to listening to everybody's tapes that are doing it. So I'm excited about that. You can you can go to my Shop Now bag. These are all Lilly approved products and services. Some of them are affiliates, some of them not. The affiliate programs provide help to the classroom, but some I just want you to know about them. Just like this, I just want you to know about them. And then last but not least, you can become an enrolled student in the classroom, whether it's $1 or $1,000 a month or a one-time donation. I encourage you to become an enrolled student and help the classroom grow, just like we all are. Every time that a wonderful teacher comes into the classroom. So I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank Dr. John Silva, who is doing this with me so that we could all learn together. And of course, I'm going to ask a bajillion questions. If you want to learn more about what Dr. John is doing, you can go to Dr. John, that's drjohnsilva.com. If you are a subscriber, you already have his information. Just click on his name and it'll take you there. Is there anything that's going on, Dr. Silva, that you would like to, for us to know that's happening when they click onto your website? Is there anything that they can learn, anything that they can research more about neurofeedback?
Yes, they sure can. I have several tabs, as with any website. There's tabs specific conditions. They can research a bit more. There is also some research. We have several research articles as it relates to neurofeedback in different conditions. There is also some of my blog posts and also some of the podcasts that I've done over the years. And there is also a page that you can schedule a complimentary consultation with me virtually through Zoom. And you can find that on that website as well. In fact, we'll talk about this afterward. I'd like to give you an updated version of that page that has just a brief informational video explaining this neurofeedback that we've been discussing. And I'm sure we'll continue this discussion
Yeah.
on future podcasts. But I want to share that new page with you that I just had developed. And then from that same page, a person can again schedule a virtual consultation. So just
Wonderful.
get an opportunity to meet, discuss what you might have going on, see if this could be the right fit for you, and then we just explore what the next best steps would be for an individual. And that's how I approach anybody in my practice, is one step at a time. Let's just engage in that conversation. Let's get to know each other and figure out the best solution to help you feel better at whatever level that might be.
Absolutely. And for those of you who want to learn more information, Dr. John Silva is just if you're living in Florida, just a drive away to Port St. Lucie. He's at 433 Northwest Prima Vista Boulevard. And his phone number is 772-494-2576, or you can just click the link and it'll take you to his website. So I'll have a new link for you guys. And by the time you watch this, there'll be a new link there. So I'm really excited to share these new things with you. One of the things that I'm looking forward to the most is seeing where this is going to take me. I truly believe that I remember everything. And I remember learning that from Marissa, I'm trying to remember her name, but I'll remember it because I remember everything. And the thing is that we manifest, I'm so forgetful, I'm so forgetful, I'm so forgetful. And when we manifest that, we get more of what we're focusing on. So when we're doing this neurofeedback, is it encouraging our brain to rewrite the story in our head? How much coaching, like I'm a coach and coaches have
Mhm.
coaches too. How much retraining would a coaching session work, or do you not need any of that when you're doing all of this?
It's case by case, I guess you could
Okay.
say. As I have
Okay.
worked with individuals, yes, they need that coaching, they need that therapy, that talk therapy, especially as they might be integrating the effects of trauma in their lifetime. And neurofeedback is well served for people with PTSD and the effects of trauma. And that's not my specialty, so I always refer out for that. But it really helps you to get through the neurological aspect of what's holding you back because of, again, that emotional trauma, those traumatic events in your life. We may have talked about this last time, but it's three primary things that affect our brain, our whole body for that matter. That's physical trauma to our head and brain, things like car accidents, slip and fall injuries where we hit our head.
Hmm.
Of course, we have the emotional stressors and traumas, which we all suffer on a daily basis to some extent, but if
Hmm.
some people have the more significant traumas or emotional events in their life. And
Hmm.
then lastly, the biochemical trauma, biochemical stressors.
Hmm.
So as your brain is healing from these things and creating these healthier neural patterns, um, it can help with the emotional aspect of our life that may be predominantly from the emotional trauma. And in some cases, people need to kind of talk through that, but it's ultimately a good thing because their brain is finally kind of cleaning out the junk in a neurological perspective. Yep.
Well, I'm excited about it. Let me tell you, I was able to get through the event, the Natural Health Summit, the I Am the Solution Natural Health Summit, and it was great. And I don't know how much of it attributed to the neurofeedback, but I felt really good. I mean, the whole entire time, that I did this, and I actually found the time to do the neurofeedback, even though I was very, very busy. I also found myself very organized, very organized. So again, because I tend to overcompensate, perhaps maybe this is just part of the growth process for me, that it'll become more natural. I don't know. So I'm looking forward to all of this. Any final words before we go?
Just final word. You don't necessarily have to be here on the Treasure Coast or in Florida, even
Mhm.
though Lillian and I are both in Florida. I do work with people remotely around the globe. So
Yes.
again, first step is just go ahead and schedule a virtual consultations. What wonderful about today's technology, we can meet virtually, and then from there we figure out the next step and the game plan. Yep.
Yeah, and let him know that Lily sent you, that you saw
Yes,
him in the
please do.
classroom. Yes, and if you want to watch last month's class, you can go to YouTube or you can go to BitChute, Odyssey, Facebook. He's everywhere, and also podcasts. We're in all podcasts. So if you like to listen to these things, it's time to do something different. If you want to achieve something different, we need to do something different. And what I love about this, Dr. Silva, is that it is tailored to me. It is
Mhm.
tailored to me. You're not just whipping up a concoction and saying, okay, this might work for you, might not work for you. But we're working on my brain, looking for the reward and getting the growth and the connection that it totally deserves. So thank you
Yes,
so much for
you're welcome.
allowing this to happen in the classroom. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. And once again, you are able to just click on the link and it will take you to Dr. Silva. So take advantage of the free consult so that he can share a little bit more with you. So thank you, Dr. Silva. You're so generous. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to continuing this journey and seeing you flourish.
Oh, thank you. Me too. Me too. And please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. John Silva wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. Good job.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before